D&D just revealed the playtest for its first new class since the Artificer. But is the even bigger news the hint that a beloved campaign setting may finally return after decades in exile?
It's finally happening!
Before we dive into the new Scion Class playtest and the potential tease of a major D&D return, why not take a second to hit those like and subscribe buttons to help us keep these character sheet videos coming? And then, let's talk some D&D. The Scion Class playtest was a surprise release from Dungeons & Dragons yesterday, bringing a fully fledged Psionic class back to the game for the first time since 4th edition, and giving this new D&D 5th edition / 2024 Rules edition its first new character since the Artificer debuted almost a decade ago in 2017. But is the even bigger news hidden in this surprise playtest the many references and Easter eggs from the classic Dark Sun setting that have some fans convinced it could be coming back to D&D in 2026. Let's talk about the new class and the potential return of Dark Sun. First off, the Scion class in the playtest seems pretty damn powerful. They have a resource die tied to their psionic abilities that they can expend to boost their chances to hit, boost their damage, or just use as a resource in general to power better versions of their psionic spells. And much like any class-based resource die, these energy dice start as a d6 and keep evolving up until they hit a d12 by the time you're level 20. You also start with a pool of 4 of these energy dice at level 1, and that also rises to 12 energy dice by level 20, so you really have a ton of resources at your disposal as a Scion. Along with 4 new subclasses, all with very powerful, distinctly different focuses, like the Metamorph who can reshape their own body into organic weapons and armor to become a frontline menace, or the Psi-Warper who can use their mental prowess to teleport themselves and their enemies all over the battlefield. The class also offers some very powerful baseline abilities, like shifting between attack or defense modes, where you can do things like use those energy dice for extra damage and ignoring psychic damage resistance, or spending your energy dice to improve your own defenses and saving throws. You also have access to a pretty full spell list of existing spells, in addition to many new psionic-based spells that are added in the playtest. And as a full spellcaster, you get access to them at the same rate a normal wizard would. So by level 5, you are flinging around 3rd level spells, just with a bunch of ways to use your energy dice to make them stronger than normal. So while the Scion class does seem like a powerful new caster class with a ton of options and a really wide spread of playstyles depending on which subclass you choose, the bigger story may be all of the references and Easter eggs for Dark Sun dropped within the playtest document. First off, the dev team references the Complete Psionics Handbook from Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition, which was released alongside the official Dark Sun setting for the same system. And inside the playtest you will find many abilities that share names, effects, or both for classic psionic abilities from that Dark Sun setting, like Ego Whip and Intellect Fortress. Dark Sun is the setting where D&D psionics largely originated and became popular, a world where psionic magic was king, as the other forms of magic had basically destroyed most of the life on the planet, leaving it a vast desert with only small patches of greenery and basically wiping out most of those practitioners. And since life force was required to power those more standard forms of magic, psionics became the new norm and led to the rise of incredibly powerful demigod-like rulers of the few city-states that survived in these brutal environments. When you think of psionics in D&D, you naturally just think of Dark Sun, because no system did more with the class or had psionics more as a part of daily life. But for a decade now, we'd basically been told that Dark Sun, with its elements of slavery and frankly magical eugenics among a few other things, would just simply never return to D&D. But with all these references to abilities and spells that first popped up in Dark Sun, could D&D have finally found a way to work around those elements and bring the desert world of Athos back into the fold? It looks like that might finally be the case, which would be an amazing 180 by the Wizards of the Coast dev team that would bring back what is, at its core, one of the most interesting campaign settings of all time in a way that modern D&D players can now enjoy. Getting rid of the slavery and the eugenic experiments at Were the Mule Race doesn't hurt the setting at all, which is incredible without those things. A world where metal is so rare that people fight wars over the smallest amount, and most adventurers spend their entire lives wearing armor and weapons made from the bones and chitin of the massive monsters that roam the dunes. A world of viciously deadly, nearly feral halflings, and towering 7-foot-tall elves that roam the desert in nomadic packs, and where the few surviving city-states in this vast desert are ruled by psionic users so powerful they've warped themselves into strange, dragon-like demigods, since of course the actual gods of Dark Sun were banished from the world centuries ago with no way of coming back. So Dark Sun potentially returning, first was the references to Dark Sun in the new 2024 core rulebooks, and now the teases and hints laid out in this new Scion Class Playtest, is something a lot of D&D fans had basically given up on ever seeing again until now. But hopefully the Scion Class, much like the Complete Psionics Handbook, is the precursor to the return of Dark Sun to the Dungeons & Dragons world, and that could happen potentially as soon as next spring. So what do you think? Do you want to play in a modern version of Dark Sun? Let us know down in the comments, and don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons.